We're talking episode 5 of HBO's The Outsider, where we see Holly put more pieces to the puzzle together about the grief eater. We see Ralph gets yet another warning, but this time it's from someone close to him. And should we be more concerned about the bouncer or Jack? We're going to talk about that and much more. Episode 5 of The Outsider was titled Tear Drinker. After returning from an eye-opening trip from New York, Holly searches for clues at several locations connected to the Dayton case. Jeannie finds herself shaken by an unnerving incident at work and delivers an anonymous warning to Ralph. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Movie Files. Elliot here, back with my weekly recap, breakdown, review of the latest episode of The Outsider. And before we get into it, I want to give a quick shout out to, first and foremost, you all are amazing that are subscribers to my channel. I appreciate the support. But Jerry O'Brien let me know earlier today, and this is showing you proof that I read the comments. He commented on my last week's review of The Outsider, episode 4, and let me know that the episode was premiering on Saturday and not Sunday because I didn't even put two and two together. Tomorrow's Super Bowl, so it probably makes sense that HBO pushed the episode ahead. I was thinking maybe hours ahead of the normal time, but they pushed it all the way to Saturday, which I am very excited to talk about it with you all today. But like I said, I had to give Jerry a shout out because he let me know that the episode was tonight. So this is a spoiler discussion. Before we dive into it, for those that are new to this channel, do me a favor. Considering subscribing to my channel. If you're all about movies, TV shows, new Blu-ray releases, trailer reaction, well, this is the channel for you. Definitely consider subscribing and hit that bell so you can stay up to date with my content. And if and when you've seen this episode of The Outsider, I want to know what you all are thinking, your theories, your comments, your concerns. What are you most excited to find out in the weeks ahead? Let me know in the comments below, and let's have some fun discussions down there. I read those comments and I respond to them, so definitely comment below. So let's do as we've been doing the last 4 weeks, and that's breaking down the episode. First and foremost, initial thoughts. I really enjoyed this episode. There were some big moments, some moments that are going to unravel itself, and I really have some questions I'm going to pose towards in this video, and I want to know what you all are thinking. But first and foremost, let's break it down. So we really follow 3 stories. You know, we got Jeannie. We get a little bit more with Jeannie and see her at work, and she gets this message from the outsider himself, or we should call him the grief eater or the tear drinker, whatever you want to call him. We see she gets that message. We follow Ralph, and, you know, we see him kind of getting a little bit of an understanding of what's going on with Holly. Speaking of Holly, she's starting to put these pieces together, and we get this Tracy character who does something really interesting. So let's break it down. First and foremost, we start the episode off with a man laying on the ground with blood, around him, and we see that he has those scratches, those marks that we saw on Jack's neck a couple weeks ago. And before we move on to the episode, we get a little title card, and we see 3 days earlier, as we see that the man that was shot at the very beginning of the episode is now alive, and we see him lay out some clothes in a blanket on a bed, and we assume that bed is to be of the house of who we found out about last week, Heath. So we're going to talk about this Terry character, or Tracy, I'm sorry. We're going to talk about him towards the end of this video, so remember that there. Just put a little thumbnail there. So as we kind of break down the rest of the episode, again, we get this Terry character, Tracy character. I don't always keep saying Terry because it's probably a character in the show played by Jason Bateman, but we get this Terry character. We're going to talk about him later, but we follow Jack. I want to touch on Jack here a little bit because I'm starting to think that, Jack or the bouncer, I don't know who is being created now. I don't know if the outsider has made his body into the bouncer or if he is starting to work on the bouncer, because we get a little moment with him at the club, or has Jack been made into the grief eater. We're going to talk about that here. But anyway, let's talk about Jack. So we see him talking to the grief eater. He seems very upset at this point. He's, having the scene set up where we saw him last week throwing a bunch of stuff in the woods. We saw the deer was eaten. I assume that's what the grief eater is eating. He just likes to eat things, in particularly little kids. And we see Jack yelling in the forest there, and it seems like, reminds me of I Know What You Did Last Summer. What are you waiting for, huh? But he's screaming that, he wants to die. He's ready to die. This, that, and the other. And we see him get pushed to the ground, kind of get knocked around, as we saw happen last week. But then this is where I'm starting to think that maybe there's 2 Jacks, because we see him. Again, we're going to break down this episode, but we see him. I just want to focus on Jack here. We see Jack, maybe being instructed Or is this the grief eater impersonating Jack? Because we see him spying on Ralph, as we saw Ralph early in the episode talking to Howie, letting him know what's going on with Holly, checking in with that. And we see that Howard is starting to not be on board with what's going on with Holly and her unorthodox ways. So we see Jack spying on him. Again, let me know in the comments. Am I on the right path? Are we seeing two Jacks now, or is this just the Jack that we know just being told what to do next? So let me know in the comments. So we see that. We see he goes to the baby shower. We see him have a little altercation with Ralph, which we'll talk about that moment in regards to him apologizing to Ralph and trying to get into the case. Again, this makes me thinking that this is either Ralph being influenced or this is the grief eater trying to find out this information. So we see him go to the baby shower, have that incident with Ralph. We see that he has that conversation with his friend T, and he tells her to back off and keep the distance. And it was very interesting. Again, this is why I'm thinking, I'm torn between thinking of what's going on with Jack, because it could have been Jack just saying, I don't want to, I don't know how much more I'm going to be on this earth. I don't want to affect you. I don't want to touch your baby, because he says he doesn't want to hold the child. Or is that the grief eater knowing that he maybe can't control himself in front of these people and maybe devour this kid in front of everybody? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments there. His friend has this nightmare where she sees someone over the baby crib taking the baby, but we see that she was probably dreaming. Or is it maybe the influence of the outsider being in the presence of the grief eater that she's now starting to have these dreams and beginning to have fear, because we're finding out the grief eater is kind of in a vein of, sticking to the Stephen King of it. It loves fear. So he likes to be around fear, make people nervous and make people scared. Same goes with the grief eater. He likes to make people nervous and obviously, have grief and have these evil thoughts. So again, is this just the setting for T maybe losing her baby in future episodes? We'll talk about that or see what's going on with that storyline there. But, very interesting moment. Again, it looks like nothing happened there, but she was dreaming. But again, I think that's something that we should keep an eye on. But Jack, again, let me know in the comments. Am I making this up? Are we looking at two Jacks? Are we looking at one Jack that's being influenced? Obviously, we know he's being influenced by the outsider, but is he doing all these things, spying on Ralph, going to the baby shower, having an argument with Ralph, talking to Ralph at the end of the episode? Let me know your thoughts below. So on to Jeannie, Ralph's wife. We see her at work. We see that she's talking to people, but she's also noticing there's a guy with a very similar hood to the grief eater himself. But we kind of later find out that was, or maybe we think it is. I don't know. Let me know if you all think that was the grief eater initially there versus the man that we saw was actually asleep. Let me know if you think that I should say, was visiting her job. We see she gets the meeting. She meets the grief eater in person as she's getting a glass of water. Very creepy, eerie, scary moment there, because what would you do in that situation? You're in your own house getting some water and you see someone in the shadows in the voice. I don't know if this is the transformation or him taking someone else's voice. It kind of sounded like Ralph, kind of sounded like Jack, or it could have just been me and making that up. But, the grief eater tells her, to make your husband stop. And she says, I don't understand what's going on. At first, I thought she was in a trance because she didn't react to stepping on glass. But she was, she was kind of aware of what was going on in a sense. She wasn't completely taken under his influence. But she says, I don't understand. And he says, well, you better. Well, he doesn't say this. I'm, obviously putting my own spin to it, but he's pretty much telling her, well, you better get what I'm saying to you because I'm going to kill you and your husband. So she gets that warning. She tells Jack or Ralph the next morning that what happened. At first I was thinking, oh, is she going to play coy about it? But she flat out straight up told him, someone came into her house, told me that you're going to die if you don't stop. And I liked that the episode did that and they didn't kind of linger that on because I hate when shows and movies do that. Like when you see something crazy, tell your significant other, no matter how insane it is, you need to tell these people what's going on. So I like that Jeannie did tell him, even though Ralph did not heed the advice that was given to him yet twice. We know that Jessa told him pretty much the same message that Jeannie's telling him to back off the case. And we know our boy Ralph is not going to back off that easily until he comes face to face to this evil. So we see that she tells him that, and again, he doesn't take the advice from that. But the really interesting thing that we get from this conversation is that Jeannie writes him or draws him a picture, and we all know that picture looks very similar to the picture that kid in Dayton drew. So Ralph, can you get on board with me, buddy? Can you start to get on board with what Holly's figuring out? That we're dealing with some demonic, some evil, fairy tale evil stuff with this grief eater. So I like that moment there. So another thing that we get with Ralph is he gets the call from Holly, which we'll talk about here in a bit. Holly tells him to take some pictures of Terry's grave, and he gets the the blessing from Terry's wife, Gloria. We see that he takes the pictures, and then we notice that the grave is very close to the barnyard that we saw Terry taking his clothes off. So again, the pieces are starting to come together, guys. I'm really enjoying this so far. It's a slow burn. I know not everyone's on board with the slow burn and kind of the methodical approach that they're taking, but I'm loving it so far. So we see that moment there, and we see how close it is. So now on to our Holly, who is a fan favorite of mine. I'm really enjoying Cynthia Erivo's character and her performance. So we see, again, I brought it up in my review last week. We see that she's talking to that bartender as I posed in my review last week. I'm like, who is this bartender? Are we going to see her again? And yes, we do. So we see that they have an interesting conversation. Holly asks her, who was your folktale? Who was the boogeyman that your parents told you to behave, or this person's going to get you? And they have that conversation there. But within that conversation, the bartender, which I hope we get a name for the bartender before I can stop calling her that. We might not see her again because, Holly's back in town. But anyway, the bartender tells her that, tear drinker, and that if she was this person, that she would be around a cemetery. And that makes sense. The grief. He likes grief. So it's kind of a buffet for him. So we see Holly visits the cemetery. She takes pictures. She's starting to put the things together, and she's seeing that, okay, this would make sense for him to be here with the people of the dead, grieving and them visiting their lost ones. And she's noticing that these cemeteries are by these kind of abandoned places, which would be a great hideout spot for this crazy grief eater demonic thing. So very interesting stuff there. And then we get Holly and Andy. I don't want to say her obsession. I don't know what the relationship is between her and Andy. Is this like her way of... She might really like him, or is it? I don't know if it was her way of getting, her getting information from him. But I don't know what the thing is. But I'm glad that she's having some kind of human interaction with someone. And Andy, the big thing about Andy is after they sleep together, he finds a little note that I don't know if she intentionally left there, because we know that Holly is very methodical and very detailed. I don't think she would just leave things around her hotel room without leaving little breadcrumbs. So I think that might have been intentional, that she wanted him to find that and help her out in this case. So we see that Andy does indeed kind of do his research and maybe help her out and come back to help out Ralph and everyone involved there. So very interesting moment there. But then finishing up this breakdown, going back to the gentleman at the very first of the episode, we see Terry again. We see that Holly had visited Ralph's or the gentleman Heath's place, and we see that the bed was made up. And if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But I assume, for what I took from that moment in this Tracy character, that he was the one that killed those little girls, and that he was the actual person that did it. And they just used Heath as the person claiming that to be accused of murdering these girls, but he was the one that actually did it, because again, he was the one that laid out the clothes. It was like remorse. He felt bad about what happened with Heath. He even said so to Holly, that the grief eater messed him up, messed Tracy up. So I think that's what the episode was telling us. And a very critical moment, we see that Tracy, takes the guy and has a little standoff with the cops, and his gun was unloaded. So he didn't kill himself like some of these other people that has been affected by the grief eater. He wanted to die, and that was his way of kind of giving up and not being, a slave to this, this demon. So very interesting moment there with Tracy. We get that moment with him, which was very different from the other victims. We get the moment with Maria last week. She didn't die. She's still alive. So these people are fighting against the grief eater. He doesn't always win these battles. So very interesting moment. So last moments of this episode, I would say a very emotional moment so far in this season. We see that Ralph falls asleep in Derek's room. He has a dream, and we see Derek telling him, "Dad, you need to let me go." Very interesting moment, because for me that reads that the grief eater is not going to be eating at Ralph anymore, and Jeannie, after their loss of their son, that he's gonna pursue this mission now. He doesn't have that, I don't want to say burden, but he doesn't have that grief on him as much as he did, because he has that moment where his son's telling him, "You need to let me go." So very powerful moment, a very interesting moment to end the episode. So things that I want to ask you all, and I want to know your comments below. Again, let me know if you think Jack, there's two Jacks. There's one that's the grief eater, and that's one that's Jack being controlled by the grief eater. Or if this is just, again, if this is just the grief eater telling him what to do, he's in his mind because of that scratch, and he's the one that's spying on Ralph. He's the one at the baby, or at his best friend's house at the baby shower. Or, like I said, are there two Jacks walking around? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Or are we seeing the bouncer? Because, again, he was scratched by Terry, and we saw he had a moment in this episode where he was kind of, revisiting that night, and obviously he's going to maybe have that influence of the grief eater. So let me know if I'm just crazy or you're on the same board with me. Let me know in the comments. And again, we got a lot to talk about. The trailer for the weeks ahead was amazing. I cannot wait to see how this all unfolds. We have, I believe, 4 episodes left, and I'm excited. I can't wait to review episode 6 for you all. Again, give this video a thumbs up. Really helps out the channel. Comment below your thoughts, your theories, your likes, your dislikes. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Make sure you're following me on all my social media accounts. Check out all the content I have on my channel right now. I did my movie and TV bucket list for this month of February, which is my birthday month. I did a Hansel and Gretel, or I should say Gretel and Hansel review recently, trailer reaction to F9, so a lot of great content on my channel. I do plan on probably doing a recap of the trailers that we're going to get for the Super Bowl, so I'm not going to be watching the game, but I'll be reacting to those trailers probably tomorrow. So again, thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next week for episode 6. Thank you all for the support, and see you in the next video.